So I noticed a lot of people were just writing in this week, but I wanted to make another video simply because it just kind of saves on time, and I kind of like the idea of it being more personal. So anyway, this one is for treatment of the young, and this chapter actually stood out to me a lot because you don't often, you know, in the West at least, or maybe it's just me, I don't spend a lot of time really thinking about different forms of child rearing, and that may be largely due to the fact that I myself do not have any children. I played a big part in helping raise my sister's children, but obviously it's just not the same when it's not your own child. I just wanted to touch on the questions, particular traditional practices and things that they might offer. I was reading through a lot of them, and the ones that really stood out to me was the allo-parenting, because I think that could benefit our society a lot. I have noticed a huge increase in the amount of helicopter parents that I see on a daily basis, and even just within my own social circle. A lot of Western type parents seem to just always be on top of their child, and not in the same way as traditional societies often have their child with them while they're going about their day and working. I mean quite the opposite, where the child is going about their day and doing their stuff, and the parent is just hovering over them all the time, making sure to like micromanage everything. I even see it within my own social circle. A lot of my friends have children, and instead of letting these kids figure something out on their own, something that poses zero threat to the child, and they could easily figure it out on their own with a little bit of trial and error, but these parents swoop in right away to just do it, and for them. And I think it has a lot to do with just the fast pace of our society. A lot of parents don't have the patience that they used to, or the parents used to, or that a lot of traditional society parents might have. And I think it is just that parents want things done right, and they want it done quickly, so they swoop in and they do it for the child rather than allowing the child to figure it out on their own, which in my opinion, figuring it out on your own is really one of the strongest ways to learn, because they're doing the task, they're problem solving, they're critical thinking, and then they're applying that new set of skill, and they're probably more likely to get it right in the next time they use it. Sorry, my camera's going out of focus and being all funky. It's very distracting. And then some other things that I wanted to comment on was the front-facing babies in the traditional societies. Stop it. The front-facing babies in traditional societies makes a lot of sense to me, especially after having taken a psychology class and learning just how much our brain benefits from watching somebody do something. Oh my god, that's driving me insane. What is happening? Stop this. I think it's from my candle. Hang on. Are we good now? Are we cool? Is it cool now? Okay, sorry, that was driving me absolutely insane. But the front-facing babies, while the moms or the dads or the parent goes about their day, I think that is really, really cool, because in psychology we learn that while your brain watches someone do something or watches something happen, it's teaching itself or laying the foundation for learning how to do that thing. And so it would make sense if a baby is, strapped to the front of you while you're going about and doing your daily tasks. It would make sense that that baby, having been exposed to all of those things and being exposed to the environment that frequently, would probably have more of a foundation for learning similar tasks, or at least have more cognitive ability or cognitive development from having watched that stuff on a daily basis, as opposed to a baby that is facing backwards all the time and lacking in that. I really wish my camera would stop being so silly. Whoa. Because it is driving me crazy. Multi-age playgroups. That also stood out to me as something that could be largely beneficial in our societies. It's strange to me that we keep the kids so, segregated from each other, because I think that not only could the older kids benefit from being in a leadership role or having the opportunity to lead the younger kids, but obviously the younger kids are then going to learn a bunch of new skills, new words, new everything from the older kids, and that can be beneficial both ways. Obviously that might come with its own downsides, like bullying and stuff like that, but I think that the benefits probably outweigh the negatives, and as horrible as it is, bullying also is an opportunity to learn, because you can teach all of the kids about, you know, inclusivism and stuff like that. Ba, 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 ba. Also, the making of their own toys. I thought this was really, really cool, and I didn't even think of something like that, because having the kids make their own toys would encourage their imagination, it encourages their motor skills, it encourages creativity, and it allows them to take pride in something that they've made themselves, and they're probably a lot less likely to lose that toy because they made it, that, you know, it's special, it has sentimental value. It's a lot more, or it's going to be a lot more important to that child than, say, you know, a piece or a bucket of Play-Doh or a piece of toy, a piece of Lego, something that they got that, you know, every other kid has the exact same thing. It's just a manufactured copy of something that's been made 1,000 times. They're a lot more likely to lose that, or to stop caring about it, lose interest in it, than they would if they had made their own toy and sculpted it with their own hands and, you know, came up with the whole idea themselves. I love that. I think that's so cool, and I really wish that that was more normalized in our society. I also noticed that Tyson made a really good point about threats to children, like man-made threats in our Western society versus the natural threats that a lot of traditional society children would face. And so it makes a lot of sense for traditional societies to have their child up and with them all the time, and off of the ground and in their sight, whereas Western children, I guess, have more freedom in terms of natural threats, but a lot less freedom in terms of all of the threats within our community. And Tyson made a really good point about having to protect our children from other members of our community, which I'm obviously not sure, but they didn't really emphasize that in traditional societies, but in Western societies it is a huge focal point, that we ingrain in our children from a very young age not to trust strangers and to trust your gut and to always take steps to prevent anything like that from happening with a stranger. You know, stranger danger, I think, is a very, very real issue for kids in a Western society. And then I also was reading through some of the other comments, and one that stood out to me was Emily's comment about the normalization of, in Western societies, of leaving the nest early and really pushing kids to leave as soon as possible. And I agree with her that that's kind of bizarre, and that I think as a society we could maybe benefit from living with our families for longer, or maybe just including older generations back into our families once it's time for us to have children of our own, because the whole idea of allo-parenting from grandparents and from older generations could be very helpful in multiple ways, and obviously they could pass down their knowledge to the children and to us, and just so many beneficial things that could come from that. What were the other questions? How things could be adopted into our culture. I kind of touched on some of that. A lot of the things that stood out to me as being feasible are things that probably would pretty seamlessly be adopted into our culture, because they were things that existed once for us. It's just been so long since we've, I guess, normalized something like that. Obviously it's difficult for me to say, not having any children of my own. It's difficult for me to make comments on how to implement parenting methods. And as for resistance, I could definitely see some resistance to some of these things, like the multi-age play. I can imagine that there might be some resistance due to the bullying potential, and just, I guess, we've done things the same way for so long that a lot of people will use that as a reason against change, and that's very frustrating, because what a bogus reason, you know, like, oh, we've just always done it this way. In my opinion, that's not a valid reason not to change, and unfortunately a lot of people do just fall back on that, like, traditional ideology of just, oh, well, this is how it's always been done, so this is how it's going to be done, and that really is unfortunate. And I think that that kind of resistance, what it would tell us about the culture is just that we are very much comfortable being stuck where we are, and I think that does have a lot to do with just older generations' ideologies, because I don't know if this is just my personal experience, but a lot of the newer generations that I've had the opportunity to come in contact with and have really good discussions with, it does seem overall that as a society we are having more open-minded discussions about some of these things, and I think that more progressive change might be on the horizon for humanity, I hope. Obviously, being stuck in the same ways hasn't really done us much good in the past 30, 50 years, and change is inevitable. So I think it's really good to push ourselves to be open, always open to change, or at least to considering it. And I think that it would be largely beneficial to adopt a lot of these traditions in child rearing into our societies, or at least to talk about it and see if we can't find a compromise, somewhere in the middle. One other thing that I wrote down actually that stood out to me was just this whole idea in Western societies of ranking and grading our children and defining their worth based on like academic subjects. We very much in the Western society place an emphasis on the core subjects, and I think that really does an injustice to those kids and those individuals that are more artistically inclined, because in my opinion the arts are so vital and so important to us as a culture and to us as a species. I think it is very important to place emphasis on the arts and on creativity and creation, because what is more beautiful about being human than having the ability to critically think and create? And to stifle that, especially in children and at such a young age and so systematically, is really unfortunate. And I think that a lot of work could be done to the curriculum, especially the early curriculum, to reshape the way that we think about, or the way that we place value upon individuals. This whole idea of self-reliance and, importance being placed on just the individual being able to do things on their own, I think it is really unhealthy, and it goes against human nature because we're social creatures, and to make someone feel wrong or to feel broken because they are more in tune with their creative social side, I think it's just really messed up. Okay, well, I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to make sure that I got all the points that I wanted to get. Yeah, circling back to the beginning, I think the whole idea of helicopter parenting should be thrown out the window. I was raised in a family that very much believed in learning the hard way, and sometimes if you got hurt, you got hurt. You learn not to do that thing again, or you learn to be more careful next time. And I mean, maybe that's considered barbaric by some people's standards, but I think that it is really important. Obviously, I would draw the line in, like, I'm not gonna let a child of mine play with sharp knives or anything like that, but I think it comes down to explaining to the child the danger and then leaving it up to them. Like, once you've given them the knowledge, are they gonna still test the boundaries? And it is a learning experience, and people learn the hard way. Often they do. You can tell a toddler no a million times, and until they go and figure it out for themselves, they're probably not going to listen. So yeah, all in all, I think there are a lot of traditions or traditional practices that we could definitely roll back into our society. They might need a little bit of tweaking to be more widely accepted by people today, but I think it's a very interesting conversation to have, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, because just because we've done something the same way for such a long time doesn't mean that we're doing it the right way, and it doesn't mean that it can't be improved upon for the benefit of everybody. So yeah.